You're a teenager 12,000 years ago in what will one day be called Turkey. You're hungry. In front of you stands a large brown animal with 4 legs and a heavy bag of liquid hanging between her back legs. You've watched her feed her own calf with it. The liquid comes out of her body. It is warm. It is white. It is supposed to be for her baby. You look at her. You look at the bag. And for some reason, you decide that's what you're going to eat. How did anyone ever discover food? Not the obvious stuff. Not berries and meat. The weird stuff. Bread from crushed grass seeds, cheese from rotting milk, beer from spoiled water, olives that need to soak in salt for months. Who was hungry enough or curious enough to try these things first? This is one of the strangest questions in human history. Because for almost every food in your kitchen, someone at some point did something completely unreasonable. Let's start with what we know for certain. In 2018, an archaeologist named Amaya Aranzo-Taigui was sifting through ash from an ancient fireplace at a site called Shubaika 1 in the Black Desert of Jordan. She found small charred crumbs. Under a microscope, they showed something nobody expected. Tiny pockets of trapped gas, a web of starch fibers, the signature of yeast and heat. It was bread, charred, simple, flat bread. The fireplace was 14,400 years old. That's at least 4,000 years older than the invention of agriculture. The people who made it were Natufian hunter-gatherers. They did not farm. They walked across the desert collecting wild grass seeds, ground them between stones, mixed them with water, and baked them on hot ashes. They were eating bread before anyone had ever planted a field. Think about what that means. Someone had to look at grass, small dry seeds at the top of a tall green stalk, and decide that food could be hidden inside it. Then crush it. Then mix it with water. Then bake it. Each step required a leap that wasn't obvious. And nobody knows who made the leaps. In 2018, another team led by Li Liu at Stanford found something even stranger in Rakshafet Cave in Israel. Hollowed-out stone basins from 13,000 years ago, again from the Natufian culture. Inside the basins, residues of starch grains that had been deliberately malted and fermented. It was beer. Beer made from wild grains soaked in water until they sprouted, then cooked, then left to spoil on purpose, then drunk. They were brewing alcohol thousands of years before they were farming. In 2012, in Poland, archaeologist Melanie Salquay studied 7,500-year-old pottery shards full of tiny pierced holes. Sieves. Chemical residues showed concentrated, separated milk fat. Cheese. Someone 7,500 years ago had figured out how to take the curdled solids out of soured milk and dry them into something that wouldn't go bad. We have no idea who, but they invented a food you ate this week. And there's a cave painting at Cuevas de la Rana in eastern Spain, 8,000 years old. A small figure climbs a thin rope ladder toward the mouth of a cave, surrounded by tiny dots representing bees. They are reaching into the swarm with one hand, holding a container in the other. They are stealing honey. Someone painted it on the wall because it was important enough to remember. Someone, before that someone, was the first human to look at a swarm of stinging insects guarding a sweet liquid inside a hole in a tree and decide that the liquid was worth the stings. And here's the thing. None of these foods were discovered by accident. Every single one required somebody to do something completely unreasonable. Crush poison out of a root. Drink fermented water on purpose. Eat the rotted clot of an animal's secretion. The pattern, when you stack it up, is unsettling. The weirdest foods always came from the hungriest people. So how did this actually happen? Why did our ancestors keep trying things they should not have tried? The first thing that drove food invention was hunger. Not curiosity, not science, just empty stomachs. Most of the great food discoveries show up during climate transitions, droughts, or migrations into new ecosystems. When the easy food ran out, you had to look at the harder food, the bitter root, the strange seed, the dangerous mushroom. Most of the time you got sick. Sometimes you died, but occasionally you survived and you remembered. The second thing was fire. Around 1 million years ago at sites like Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, controlled fire entered the human toolkit. Fire changed what counted as food. Cooking destroyed toxins, softened tough plants, killed parasites. Cassava in South America is still toxic raw. Processing it requires grating, soaking, pressing, and drying that takes days. Somebody figured this out without instructions, without writing, without recipes, and taught it to their children, and their children remembered. The third thing was fermentation. This is where humans got really weird. Fermentation is technically controlled rotting. You take something alive, grain, milk, fruit, and you let bacteria or yeast eat the sugar in it. What's left is safer, lasts longer, and often tastes better. But to discover fermentation, somebody had to eat the rotted thing first. Somebody had to taste the milk that had separated in a goat stomach bag and decide the curdled clot inside wasn't garbage. They were tasting yogurt or cheese. Across every continent, fermentation appears independently. Kimchi, sauerkraut, injera, miso. Different humans, different places, the same trick. Let it rot, then eat it. But the real thing that drove food discovery wasn't any of these. It was memory across generations. No other animal does this. A monkey that finds a new food remembers it for its own life. A human teaches it to their child, who teaches it to their child for 1,000 generations. The cassava processor in the Amazon was using a technique refined for thousands of years before her. Every food in your kitchen exists because someone tried it, taught it, refined it, and someone else didn't forget. And then around 10,000 years ago, something shifted. Agriculture happened. People stopped wandering and started planting. Wild grasses became wheat. Wild goats became domesticated. And somewhere in this transition, around 7,500 years ago in the dairy regions of Europe, a genetic mutation spread quickly through human populations. The mutation kept the lactase gene, the one that digests milk sugar, switched on into adulthood. Before that mutation, almost no adult could drink milk without getting sick. After it, suddenly milk became a year-round food. You can still see this divide today. People whose ancestors didn't herd dairy animals tend to be lactose intolerant. People whose ancestors did aren't. Evolution moved that fast because somebody, somewhere, kept drinking milk anyway. Today, you walk into a grocery store and you don't think about any of this. You don't think about who first ate a cheese that smelled like death. You don't think about the person who decided that fermented cabbage was food. You don't think about the cassava processor. But your entire dinner tonight is built on a chain of weird, hungry, curious ancestors who tried things you would never put in your mouth. And here's the truth. The reason your kitchen exists, the reason you know cheese is food and not a thing to throw away, the reason bread is normal, the reason coffee tastes like home. Because for hundreds of thousands of years, a hungry human looked at something nobody had ever eaten and thought, let me try it. Most of them got sick. Some of them died. A few of them found something incredible. And they remembered. And they told their children, and their children told theirs. Every food on your plate is the survivor of a 300,000-year-long experiment. And most of the experimenters' names are gone. We didn't invent cooking at a restaurant. We invented it on a fire by somebody hungry enough to taste what nobody else would.